What's going on, YouTube? And started here and right back again with another episode of Off the Break. I am Ordyh, and obviously I am joined again by Hypers. What's up, Hyper?
What's up, the guys?
All right, so of course we are here to talk about the CDL Atlanta event that just concluded over the past weekend. Just want to give a shout out to FaZe, Atlanta FaZe. They won the tournament.
Yeah, no, big congrats to FaZe. Like I said, we kind of expected it,
Did
and they kind of, you know, we thought it'd be a little easier. Don't get me wrong, it was easy, but we thought it'd be a little easier for them. But nonetheless, it was like 2 really good days of Call of Duty. A lot of Series
Definitely.
Fives, and we're gonna go over this like over the podcast. So
Yeah, for sure. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is we're just going to go over who came out of Group B and who came out of Group A, obviously. So out of Group B, the Chicago Huntsmen and the Minnesota Rocker were the two teams that came out of Group B. We knew this was going to happen. Obviously, those are both teams that we picked. Hyper, are you at all? What's your takeaway from Group B at least?
um, yeah, like we were right. We both said that Atlanta FaZe and the Minnesota Rocker were both coming at a B, but I don't think we expected how strongly the Minnesota Rocker were going to come out.
Yep.
Um, Especially when you saw like past the group stages when they went in the bracket, they definitely, and we'll talk more about this later. They definitely put up a fight against Atlanta FaZe. So that's my biggest takeaway from Group B.
I definitely agree on that one. Minnesota Rocker definitely came to rock the house. You see that pun I gave you, but like again, they kind of made light work of Paris earlier on, and obviously lost Chicago in the group, and but that was expected. We knew that Chicago was going to come out strong. I'm not gonna lie though, they did look really iffy this whole weekend. That's my biggest takeaway is Chicago. I'm not gonna say anything bad about them, of course. 'Cause I feel like we both thought that they were gonna get second place or they were gonna at least make it to the finals or something. They made it into top four at least. We'll get into actually the final bracket later. But for right now, I mean, Chicago did not look as good as they did at London. Is my biggest takeaway, and it is a little worrisome. But it happens. Some players just don't perform well. Sometimes, like they're just you have those days. You have those off days, and I feel like Gunless is the one who had the biggest off day for Group B.
Yeah, like a lot of the cast are saying, I think it's this range true. Like any of these teams can beat each other on a given day. It's just who shows up on match day.
Exactly. That's what makes this new format a little bit interesting. Yep.
All right, so I'm gonna add. What's your biggest takeaway from Group A?
The biggest takeaway
You
from
have to
Group
say.
A. Okay, so first of all, the two teams that actually came out of it was Atlanta FaZe. We all obviously the eventual winners, and the biggest takeaway is the one I want to talk about is the Florida Mutineers. Shout out to Hyper and his
Yeah,
home his home city
yeah,
home
I know,
state
right?
team. That's my biggest takeaway from them is they came to play, and it was a very that group was very interesting in itself because you had London, you had Florida, you had Atlanta, and Optic all in the same group. So it was really tough who that second out was gonna be. I think we all agreed that FaZe was gonna eventually be out of it, but the other team was like it really could have been any of them honestly, and it wouldn't have been a big deal. But Florida of those three, Florida was like my least pick. Like I predicted Optic was gonna somehow make it out if they figured it out, but unfortunately they have not. We'll get into that next. London, London did not look that good this weekend either. Um, but yeah, Florida definitely came to play. They made it into the top four. They actually made it to top two, and yeah, that's my biggest takeaway from that group.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway isn't from Florida. I had trust in my team.
You did.
Top
You
two.
picked.
We'll take it. We'll
You
take
did.
it.
You did pick them to win at least one of their matches. You did pick them to come out, so I'll
Yeah,
give you credit for that. I was wrong. You were right. I bow to you on
yeah,
that one.
my top four. I think my top four was right. My prediction, pretty much.
I think
My
yours was too,
my
because yeah, because we both
yeah,
picked the other three. I said Optic. You said
yeah,
Florida, so you were definitely correct on the
yeah,
Florida thing.
yeah.
Uh,
I think my biggest takeaway was yeah, the London Royal Ravens. Like they looked good at London. Obviously at the home series, they had the home crowd behind them. But they just didn't look as strong as we saw them back at home.
yeah, same
Whether it
with
had to do
Paris.
with
Both the EU teams did not look good at all this weekend.
yeah, and they said that again. EU consistency isn't very. It's not very. You know, it happened last year too. On BO4,
It happens
they showed
every
up, but
year.
they weren't
Let's
consistent.
be
Yeah, it
real
happens
here. It
every year.
happen.
Yeah,
It happens every year with them, except for
yeah. The
like in
EU
like
teams
Black
aren't
Ops
very
3
consistent.
when Splice won a tournament. That's when Splice was like the EU team, not the NA mixture
Yeah,
that they had last year. All right,
yeah. So
so the next point I want to bring up is the biggest letdown of the entire weekend, and that is Optic Gaming Los Angeles. I just want to just say something real quick. I am really being let down by them. I when you look at the roster on paper, I just don't really understand how they're not doing well. I really wish I knew. I wanted to like delve into their minds a little bit. I'm not really sure. You would think that with that roster of talent, like they're all champions, they're all MVP caliber players. At least they were in their prime. At least, obviously, I'm looking at you, J Cap, in this moment, and you have J Cap who has 2 rings. You have Slash who has a ring. These guys are all MVP caliber players. Like I said, they're all they're all superstars and all stars are former all star superstars in their own right. Like I want them to click because they just look too good on paper, but they're just not performing well. So Hyper, what do you think Optic needs to do moving forward to maybe turn themselves around? Because right now they're the only team in the league right now still having 0 CDL points to get them into those playoffs slash COD champs at the end of the year.
Yeah, you talked about 0 points. That I know a lot of Twitter beef and stuff like that.
Zero.
Like a lot of the
They
jokes is
have
like,
zero.
like we both have the same amount of points.
Even Ultra has some.
Yeah, the like we both have the same amount of points as Optic does in terms of the CDL points, which is the
Exactly.
funny thing.
I have as many
um,
points as they do.
yeah, yeah. I think what Optic needs to do, and they haven't, like we said, they haven't clicked at all this season. I think they need to solidify the roles, right? To me, they're kind of all over the place. They don't have solidified roles. They don't know who's doing what, and I think they need to work on that and go over VODs and just solidify who's doing what and who's on, what, whether it be an MP5, an MP4, or watch certain cuts and stuff like that. And I don't think they've really gone over it as much as they should.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they really need to work onto that coming in the next home opener, where they
Which is
need to show up in
theirs.
front of the home crowd.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah,
need to
the
show up
next
in front
one
of
is
the home
theirs.
crowd.
Yep.
So I do expect them to have a win at least, so at least 10 CDL points coming in there into the home series, whether it be from the Gorillas or their other match. Yeah, they just need to work things out in terms of team chemistry.
I think what they need to do is work on their vetoes a little bit better because, and also change their roles up a little bit. If you notice throughout the whole weekend, Dashi was their main AR player, and Slasher was using MP5 quite a bit, and we all know that Slasher's not a submachine gun guy. I feel like they need to swap that out, have Slasher be the main AR, Dashi, and also I think but going back to what I said about the vetoes is they're not playing maps that they should be because if you notice this weekend, compared to Minnesota or even last or at the London event, okay, at Minnesota, no one played St. Petro Dom. It was picked 0 times. It was banned every single time. It was vetoed all the time. 100% veto rate. At the last event, I think it was only picked once. This event, I'm pretty sure it was like 9 times we saw Petro Dom because people are starting to realize that that map can be suited more for AR players because you can have more AR players like watching lanes and whatnot. And I feel like people are starting to realize that, except Optic. And you would think that they should be playing on that map more, and they should be playing on Cave Hardpoint more. And I don't think they played it at. I don't think they played it either this weekend. And they should be better at their vetoes and to have these more AR dominant maps so they can have the extra ARs on the map because that's their weakness right now is that they have too many AR players and in this game right now it's a 4 sub 1 AR type of meta. But also, I mean, if I feel like maybe bench someone, and I mean, I say wait for the next event, play through this next event, and if they don't do well at this next event, the Optic event or the LA event, because it's like tied with the Gorillas are kind of like tied in with that, is maybe bench someone. I maybe JCap or even TJ. TJ had a really bad event this weekend, and maybe bench one of them for Chino, give Chino a chance, or maybe even a trade one of those players off for someone else, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, I definitely expect them to be better when it comes towards the latter half of the season. We take a players like Slasher for example. Early in the year last season on BO4, he wasn't that good, and then he hopped on the 100 Thieves roster, and he definitely had a lot more momentum. So Slash is definitely one of those players to keep an eye on because he definitely comes up on the latter half of the season.
Yeah, definitely. Slasher is a great player. He definitely is, but again, he was using MP5 this whole weekend. He's an air player, so that's just not going to work. They really should have had Dashy be the sub guy because he's more faster and Slasher's not. All right, so the next thing we're gonna get just into the finals, and I just want to talk about the FaZe and Minnesota match because honestly, that was a crazy match because Minnesota was up 2-0 against FaZe, and FaZe had to come back with the reverse sweep to knock Minnesota out to make it to the finals. So FaZe is human after all, right, Hyper?
Oh yeah, they lost mass, but I think the bigger talking point when it comes to that match is like how they regained and refocused, especially with a bunch of young guns, and they're definitely that's I think the youngest team in the league, right?
Yeah, I think
So
everyone on that team is either 19 or 20. I think Major Manak's the oldest player on that team. He's only 21,
yeah,
so
yeah. So we talk
that's
about like the youth
super
and
young.
reaction time and stuff like that. They definitely don't have like a veteran on their team like a Glacier for example.
Mhm.
So the fact that they were able to regain and have that veteran almost like veteran regaining, uh, we that was definitely a big talking point. And along with Crowder's probably one of them probably if not the best coach that COD has ever seen.
I agree.
With
He's the
with
best
that Atlanta
coach because
FaZe
he was
and
the
100
best coach.
Thieves from
Yeah, he
last
was the best
season.
coach last year. Yep.
Yeah, so definitely take into consideration Crowder's definitely had a lot of help. Especially since they don't have that veteran presence on that roster.
I agree. Minnesota again. They came to play. We both picked them to make top four. I just thought that they were just going to come in and lose 3-1 or something to FaZe, but they came out strong. They came out hot. They were up 2-0. They had it in their grasp, and unfortunately didn't. The young guns. The Mountain Dew game field kicked in after game three, and they just took over.
Yeah, especially since the that Rocker took the 2-0 disregarding the reverse sweep. I think it really highlights that when it comes to like if you go and look and redo the power rankings, they're definitely going to be up there. They're definitely going
Oh yeah,
to be number 4 and maybe number 3.
I still have them
Um,
in my top four for
yeah,
power rankings, 100%.
yeah. When we talk about like, especially when it comes to the finals, yes, Mutineers made it to the finals, but they didn't really pack too much of a punch, whereas the Rocker did on the semis.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you would have Rocker over Mutineers, even though Mutineers made it to the finals.
Yes, and speaking of Mutineers, that's the next match that came up, and that was also a reverse sweep, but it wasn't what you thought it was going to be. Chicago Huntsmen fall to the Mutineers in a reverse sweep of their own. And that was the most shocking thing of the whole weekend. I feel like I said earlier, Gunless had a really bad weekend. Scumpy also had a really bad weekend. That things happen, it happens. You can't. No one plays perfect all the time. Mutineers definitely showed they came to play. Pristini wanted to show up, especially against his brother, his twin brother, Arceus, who's on the Huntsman, and he showed up. And he showed out because he was playing really well. Like in that match, at least he was definitely the MVP because he was making plays left and right. And you know that's my biggest takeaway is that's what makes this league great is because all 12 of these teams are good. Obviously, they're just against each other, like who's better than who, and at any given moment or any given time, this just proves that anyone could beat anyone, and that's why these power rankings sometimes should just be thrown out the window. We've seen it with Paris already, and now we're seeing with Florida, like giving a middle finger to these power rankings, like having them ranked so low, and they can come on beat anybody.
Yeah, I think Mutineers, like Pristini's definitely the veteran and the big X factor on that team. When he definitely showed up against the Huntsman, especially when they had an off day, I think that's what forced him to win the game. Especially since he was going all out, had a lot of momentum coming in from the previous game against was it the Ravens, and especially going against his brother. Right, it was very emotional. You saw the clips.
Yep.
It was a really emotional game for both of them, and for Pristini to come out on top. With the momentum they had, you wouldn't have it any other way.
Yep. Shout out to the Mutineers. Like I said, I tip my non-existent hat to them, but unfortunately, that momentum did run out in the finals. As we already congratulated FaZe on winning, FaZe did sweep the Mutineers in a pretty easy fashion, I would say. I don't think that match was that close, to be honest. Again, FaZe just steamrolled them, and it was just an unfortunate thing. I know the search. Well, okay, let me take that back because
Yeah.
the search and the Dom were really close. The hard point they just
Yeah.
smacked them. They beat them by like 112 points, and the search was close 6-4, and the Dom was 148 to 137. But honestly, like the scores don't tell the story. It did just look like Florida was kind of lost most for the most part in that match. And that's just my biggest takeaway for that finale was just, phase one. We all knew phase was going to win this. It didn't matter. I mean, even if it was phase versus the Huntsman, I still picked phase to win anyway. So,
Yeah, I mean, the match was definitely a lot closer than the series said. Like 6-4 on Search, 148 to 137 on the Dom. I think when you go back and say what are the Florida Mutineers need to work on, it's probably the hard point. They definitely need a lot of work on the hard point, and for
They
the
got
Atlanta
out rotate.
Phase,
They
yeah,
they were actually they were actually doing pretty well on rotations. It's just that the firepower wasn't there. Face has the better firepower. They were setting up quickly, like on the money hills, like in
yeah,
pool. Um, Florida had that rotation like twice. FaZe just walked in there and killed everyone with ease. Like that's usually the money hill that like if you don't rotate to that, you're not gonna get it. Against a good team. And unfortunately, FaZe is just the better team, and they just said, "Screw your rotations. We're just gonna slide cancel in there and kill everyone with their MP5s."
yeah. I was kind of a little bit disappointed because I expected this match, that hard point, to be a little bit closer, especially since they played the London Royal Ravens twice this weekend on the St. Petra hard point. The first time they did get whooped, and then the next day on Sunday, I think they went over VODs. They looked over what they needed to fix,
Yeah.
and they won that. So I kind of expected them to put up much more of a fight since they kind of went over it and definitely won the map, won the St. Petro on a series before. But the slaying power on the Atlanta phase was definitely a lot more, and it's kind of overwhelming for them. So I think that's the reason they lost that hard point for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I just don't think, like I said, the firepower wasn't there with them. But that's pretty much it. We're gonna wrap this here up. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, congratulations to Atlanta FaZe. Hyper wins the next event.
It's LA. I think it's March 7th to March 8th. March
Yep.
8th in LA. So we'll definitely see. We definitely want to see the LA side, both LA teams, the Los Angeles Guerrillas and Los Angeles Optic, do a lot more, and it's going to be interesting because now we know that Seattle, I think, switched Pander onto their roster, and we did see kind of clips and hints. We're not exactly sure, but we did see Blast, maybe took Ake's spot, and maybe Ake might get benched, but we'll see more towards the actual event.
Yes, and we'll be back for another episode of Off the Break before that event starts, obviously, to give us our thoughts all around about the group plays and who we expect to come out of that. But that's pretty much, like I said, we're gonna wrap this up. I'm Ordyh. This is Hyper. We'll catch you guys in the next episode of Off the Break.
All right, later, guys.